All right. Investigating the biggest scam in Pokemon by Patrick CC.
PSA has the power to turn a singular Pokemon card into a multi-million-dollar asset. When Logan Paul's ultra-rare Pikachu Illustrator was given a PSA 10 grade, it became worth over $16 million.
Damn, 16 mil?
Single grade point.
And the same one goes for one. Damn, so you're missing out on 15 mil just because of that one little rating.
Point lower and the card's value drops to 1.4 million. But when one company has the ability to create or erase millions of dollars with a single number, there's bound to be corruption. And a recent pattern of major screw-ups has many people suspicious of PSA. They've authenticated cards that were altered to look perfect. Their grading system has been exposed as extremely inconsistent. And they've even admitted to
PSA destroyed my PSA 10 lenticular deep pocket. What? Damn.
Straight up destroying high value cards.
I ain't gonna lie, I would be mad as hell.
And those are just the mistakes that we can 100% prove. There are countless grading decisions that happen every single day that are losing people hundreds, thousands, and in extreme cases, millions of dollars. Which is why when you dig deeper into PSA, the more insane it becomes that a multi-billion-dollar industry revolves around a tiny number on a piece of plastic. Before PSA became synonymous with corporate greed, they were actually providing an extremely consumer-friendly service. PSA, which stands for Professional Sports Authenticator, offered a universal standard to determine how much a card was worth. Think back to elementary school at the lunch table. Your friend has a bag of chips, and you're willing to give up your ding-dong in exchange for it. The chips aren't objectively more valuable than the ding-dong, but if both of you are satisfied with the trade, then it really doesn't matter. Sports cards and trading cards used to be the same way. Maybe I wanted your...
because the thing about sports cards, bro, they're all a little fucking card, bro. So, I got ones right here, but it's just a card in a fucking thing, bro. A little ass card in a thing. So, bro, realistically, that shit has no real value.
Charizard card and you wanted my Pikachu card. We'd just swap them and be done with it. But eventually, how rare the cards were became a factor to consider in the trade. All of those factors is what PSA considered to determine how much a card was worth, which resulted in people paying big money for cards in all different niches. PSA
mil? Damn. Look, Jordan signature and a Kobe signature plus game jersey.
Essentially created the industry standard guide of what matters when buying or selling cards. In a close inspection, a trained PSA grader validates a card's authenticity, ensuring that it is officially licensed merchandise and not a knockoff. They assess any potential damage, such as rips, tears, scuffs, folds, and finally, they give a grade to the card's overall condition on a scuffs, folds, and finally...
Perfect card in every way, 4 sharp corners, perfect edges, flawless surface and centering. Okay, slightly wear visible only under close inspection, 4 sharp corners.
They give a grade to the card's overall condition on a 1 to 10 scale. And at the end, they carefully encapsulate the card in a protective case to preserve its condition with a label displaying its name and official PSA grade. Before PSA was rotting the industry from its core, it was actually meant to preserve the integrity of it. But as their power and influence grew, they started moving away from being a humble service for hobbyists and developing into a corporation fully fixated on profits. PSA expanded their company beyond just grading cards. They integrated with eBay to create the PSA Vault.
Fucking big corporation shit. You could tell they went from just trying to help out people that wanted to just verify that their cards are real and shit like that to getting greedy and started wanting to
which helps store, list, sell, and ship trading cards for their customers. So if you wanted to sell your recently graded card, you could have them take care of the entire selling process from start to finish with little effort. PSA even offered a buyback service where they would purchase the card directly after grading. And some interpret this as kind of a conflict of interest. You're handing a company your card, they're deciding how much it's worth, and then they're offering to buy it from you themselves. If they plan on reselling the card for a profit, it, they have every incentive to convince you it's worth a little less than it actually is.
Yep.
It's like when Rick from Pawn Stars calls in one of his buddies to tell you what your rare artifact is worth, and almost every time, it's worth way less than what you thought it was. From there, PSA's parent company, which is confusingly called Collectors, also acquired rival grading services Beckett and SGC, getting them closer to becoming a monopoly. Today, PSA and its sister companies take up 80% of the total market, with PSA accounting for a whopping 72%. And that dominance comes with an immense responsibility. The trading card market is now a multi-billion-dollar industry, and basically every collector on the planet relies on PSA's labels to determine that each card they received was authentic and in perfect condition. And when PSA makes mistakes, they aren't just minor disputes. They have the potential to be catastrophic errors that can bankrupt a collector. But before we get into that, we all live busy lives. There are so many things to do, and it never feels like there is enough time in the day. You should probably go get that yearly checkup to make sure. In 2017, a 1952 Stan Musial baseball card sold for $2,800. It had slight imperfections, including a black dot.
And then let me guess, a couple years later, it sold for $300,000
on the border, as well as a few small scuffs on his jersey. All things considered, the card was still in great condition and received a PSA grade 9. 7 months later, another copy of the card was sold, this time a PSA grade 10, for a price of $28,100. The problem is, these were the same exact card. Natural markings on the back of both.
Oh yeah, you can see it. Look at this little thing right here. Oh yeah. Boom, boom. This one, I can't really tell too much, honestly. But yeah, that's the same fucking card, bro. That is the same card, bro. That's the exact same card.
Were identical, meaning that someone had covered up its imperfections and resubmitted it to PSA, got a higher grade, and made tens of thousands of dollars. PSA is supposed to inspect every card closely before giving it a grade. It checks for scratches, scuffs, and imperfections, but it also ensures that the card is both authentic and unaltered. Like when you and I look at a PSA 8, 9, or 10, we just kind of say, yeah, I mean, it looks perfect. 10, but PSA's job is to notice the tiny things that we never would. Maybe someone repainted a tiny white chip on the edge, or they trimmed a fraction of a millimeter off the border, or they managed to fix a crease that used to be there. And even still, you might wonder what the big deal is. I mean, if a card can be restored to pristine condition, then why should it matter if it was original or not? Well, it's because the history of a card is a major factor in its value. To see a card preserved for almost 70 years without a single flaw doesn't just make it worth more money, it's also just objectively cool. And this is not just true for cards, it's really true for about anything that is rare. The flowing hair silver dollar sold for $10 million in 2013. That's because this coin was the first dollar coin issued by the...
Bro, and that shit don't even look like it's really that... Bro, this shit is like fucked up on the edges right here. Like, what? You're paying $10 million for this, bro?
United States federal government in 1794. What? Somehow, someway, this little coin was preserved for 220 years. If nobody cared about preserving anything that was rare, then we'd all just buy one-to-one bootlegs. Authenticity matters, and PSA was meant to ensure all aspects of a card were authentic, but they messed up too many times to count. A Billy Maloney card from the early 1900s was purchased
4.5
for $81 before being altered, regraded, and sold for a $900 profit. A 1952 Mickey Mantle card was altered and resold for $14,000.
What? It got a 1 and it's still worth $10,800. Anyways, I want to see how much that card is worth, bro. What do you mean? Whoa. A 10 is only 50,000. So how is a 10 50,000? But this shit is only 10K for a number.
Ironically, a separate Stan Musial card from 1948 had its edges trimmed and sold for a nearly $2,000 profit. By 2019, hundreds of examples of altered cards that PSA had improperly graded had piled up, culminating in a class action lawsuit. The lawsuit went further than accusing PSA of making a few mistakes. It argued that trained graders should have been able to recognize the alteration and alleged that PSA knowingly allowed them to enter the market regardless. The situation became too large for PSA to ignore, and they announced an internal investigation into the matter. Now, to be fair,
Yeah, let me investigate myself, bro. Hold
PSA
on.
grades millions of cards every year, and these alterations were done specifically by the seller to deceive trained authenticators into getting a higher grade. It is possible that these specific instances were genuine mistakes, and someone just figured out how to beat the authenticators. But whether PSA approved the cards knowingly or made a genuine mistake, the result for buyers was the same. Altered cards entered the market with legitimate grades that people thought were original and could be sold for far more money than they were worth, which made people start to wonder if that little number in the corner could really be trusted. Sometimes customers are disappointed with the grade their card gets.
First time I've heavily disagreed with the grade from PSA. Yeah, honestly, it looks perfect, dude. This looks like a perfect card. But maybe the back might be
they thought it was a perfect 10, but PSA found a small...
Unhappy with the grade on my first PSA submit. All looks great to me for a small dimple on the white headband. I didn't clean the card well. Is it worth cleaning and resubmitting? Is it worth cleaning? It might be. Honestly, it might be.
Imperfection that bumped it down to a 9. The customer now has two choices. They can accept the result and sell the card, or they can resubmit it to PSA and hope for a better result. Pokemon card collector and YouTuber Pokemon Steven submitted approximately 10,000 cards to be graded by PSA over the past couple of years. A little under 200 of his cards received unsatisfactory gradings. He believed that these cards were actually 10s, so he decided to resubmit them on the off chance that someone had made a mistake, and the results were shocking.
81 PSA 10s.
What? Out of 200, he got 81. Holy.
From the regrade experiment.
That's not bad, I ain't gonna lie.
189 cards in total, so 108 cards did not make the cut.
81 of the resubmitted cards were bumped up from a PSA 9 to a PSA 10. That's 42%. And
just like that, he made a bunch
but he had
of free
not
money.
changed the
Just
card
like that.
at all. The
Boom,
corners,
boom, boom,
the
boom,
art,
boom.
the surface were
extra
all
money.
exactly the
That's
same as
wild.
when he submitted them the first time.
Holy
the only
shit.
thing that changed was the grade itself. And as discussed prior, the difference between these two grades can mean the difference of hundreds, thousands, and in extreme cases, millions of dollars. What one inspector views as a 9, the other may view as a 10. And it's starting to seem like the only difference is how lucky you are when your card is being reviewed. PSA's
really
grading system is supposed to be an objective measurement of the card's condition, but as more controversies pile up, the grading seems subjective. Just goes to show that people are insane for paying such a massive premium for 10s. PSA is a huge scam, but resubmitting...
Well, realistically, a 10 is still, like, it's still, like, hard to get, bro. Like, you still can't really get a 10. Like, your card can't... Not every card is going to be perfect, bro. Like, you might have, like, a realistically an 8 or 9, but you might get lucky and still get a 10. That's the thing about it.
Could also hurt its value. Another collector submitted over 100 cards to be regraded. 19 were given higher grades, but 34 of them were actually given a worse grade. But why does this happen? I mean, the rules are clear enough. 4 perfectly sharp corners, full original gloss, no stains or no scratches, with a slight allowance for printing imperfections. The problem is that a human grader still has to decide what counts as perfect. Maybe there's a small mark in the artwork that one grader notices while the other one doesn't. What one grader sees as a printing imperfection, another may view as an unnatural defect that bumps its grade down. So now, submitting to PSA is like gambling, especially when you consider the fees associated with this process. Submitting to PSA for grading costs
expensive, bro. Holy. Max insured value, $200. Holy shit. So for $1,000, what do you get, bro? For $1,000, is that like you could just submit any card you want, or like, what is that, bro?
$1,000 per card plus shipping. And they do offer slight discounts for bulk submissions. But think about it, if you get a low grade, your card could be worth less than $25, meaning it costs more to authenticate and grade than it's actually worth. However, if your card is worth more, PSA will charge you insane amounts of money to do the exact same grading as a worthless card. Like Nico, who submitted his rare Mickey Mouse card that was worth $20,000 to PSA, only for them to charge him $1,000 for his perfect 10 grade.
Holy shit, there's no way. $1,000 for that?
Scruffy, who was charged $150 for a 10 grade 2021 Pokemon Sword and Shield Evolving Skies, and $600 for a 9 grade
$600 for a fucking, for something that they already took in. They already took your item, They authenticated it. They took your money from whatever else, and then you have to pay to get it back.
2002 Charizard
Holy
reverse
shit.
foil. There's
That's
also
crazy.
John, who was told by PSA his card was worth $25,000, which is why he needed to pay them $1,000 to authenticate it, but then his card only sold for half the value they claimed it was worth. And no,
Bro.
they didn't give him a $500 discount and say, oops, we messed up.
Oops, sorry,
He
here's
still
your
made a great
$500
profit,
discount.
but remember that the grading process for all of these cards is exactly the same, and you don't know what they are going to charge you until after they have already done the service.
Really?
This has led some collectors to accuse PSA
Wow,
of
that's
intentionally
cool.
having inconsistent grading so people will just keep submitting their cards for additional gradings. This is unlikely, considering they've been shown to both overgrade and undergrade cards. Then again, there are stories that make it easy to understand why some collectors still remain skeptical. The most notable example of this is when a collector named Preston submitted 30 separate Pikachu Zekrom GX cards to PSA for
30
grading. He
of the same
anticipated that
fucking
most
card?
of them would be perfect 10s, but he was shocked to discover that none of them
Nine.
received a perfect grade,
Not
with the
a
vast
single
majority
one?
of them receiving PSA
What?
9s. In spite of his disappointment,
they did that
Preston
on
opted
purpose,
to
bro.
sell the cards through
They did that on purpose, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you. They only did that because they didn't want him to make hella money off of that. Because if he had a bunch of 10s in that shit, they would have lost a fuck ton of money. Just not lost, but like they would have even tried to charge him a fuck ton of money. That's crazy. He sold each one of these shits for $35 too. Holy.
PSA's buyback
Holy-
service. However, he kept records of the serial numbers on his cards and searched them later online to discover that 11 of them had been listed as perfect 10s. Around this time, a PSA 9 of this exact card was going for around $41,
$200?
while a PSA 10 was
Damn.
nearly $200,
Missing out on
meaning that PSA
$150.
bought them from him as a 9 and sold them as a 10, and Preston missed out on around
Yo, thank you,
$1,500
Jonas,
for all
for
11
follow.
cards.
Appreciate you,
And this
my boy.
highlights the conflict of interest I mentioned before. The only people who can
What we
change
watching?
a grade are
Right
PSA
now we're watching investigating the biggest scam in Pokemon. So like the way PSA is like getting corrupt as fuck. Like it's just like if you were watch the whole video, bro, you would see.
themselves. So if they
how
are
fucking corrupt this shit
authenticating
is, bro.
and
They're
buying
charging
and
thousands
selling
of dollars,
cards, they could
even if your card
theoretically
is a
change
10,
the grade
and you already
of
paid.
any card to maximize
Wild.
their personal profits on the sale.
As you can see, this is a legendary collection reverse PSA 10 Mankey that's listed on eBay by PSA
Know of it.
themselves.
Really,
But if
yeah.
this card is a PSA
I guess
10,
so. I
then
never really
why
heard
does
of it,
the
but
back look like this? Because how are they
PSA 10
listing
like that
a
is
card
wild.
that
Holy
looks
shit.
like this as a PSA 10 on eBay through the PSA eBay account?
They need to get sued more. It's all a
PSA is
scam.
just-
I hate that PSA is the one that got popular. However,
Deadass,
PSA offered a different explanation. Supposedly,
PSA was
someone
only,
at PSA had seen Preston's
they were
original
good when they
post on
first started
Twitter.
out,
They
but
personally
now
believed that
it's
the
just,
initial
like,
grading was too
horrible,
harsh
bro.
and conducted a secondary manual review, resulting in updated gradings after Preston had already accepted their offer, which is shady. They conveniently
Yeah, that's what I'm
realized that they
saying,
messed
bro.
up only after
Then they made it to
already
10,
bought the cards from him
and then
and
started
resold
getting
them
profit.
for a profit. Luckily for
Pokemon
Preston,
scalpers
his story
are
got a lot of
canceled.
traction
Genuinely,
online.
bro. Like, especially the ones that just go into stores, buy all the fucking packs, and like just scalp that shit.
And
Like,
he
this
claims that
shit's-
they privately rectified the
fucking up
situation
the-
with him,
the-
which I would hope means that they gave him the
hobby,
money
bro,
he
genuinely for
deserves for
everyone.
the
It's just
cards
fucking
he
everything.
unknowingly undersold to them. But that still doesn't feel like a satisfying conclusion, and it still didn't explain why the cards
bro.
were undergraded in the first place.
I had put a card in, right, and I got a 9, bro. I swear this card is perfect, bro. And look, I don't know if you can see. Hold on. Oh, this shitty ass camera. But I got a 9, bro, and I swear this card is perfect. Like, it has no markings, nothing. I could have sold it for a lot more if I got a fucking 10, but no, I got a 9.
Fellow collector
Shit's some
claimed that
bullshit,
cards
bro.
tend to be undergraded by PSA when they receive bulk quantities of the same card. I guess the logic is that when you look
They
at the
don't want
same
nobody
card
to make
over
hella
and
money,
over
bro.
again, you maybe start to see imperfections that aren't there. Or maybe the same person is just going over all of them and is like, surely they can't all be 10s, so here's a 9. But obviously that
Yeah,
would be
bro.
corrupt and unethical business practices.
With the dude that
But most importantly,
entered
PSA
10
did
fucking
not
cards and got not a single
right with Preston until
PSA 10
after
is
he
wild,
went viral on
that
social
is-
media and gave them bad publicity. Was Preston the only person this has ever happened to?
My
Or was
hobby
he
is
just lucky
Warhammer?
enough to get
Was that a
attention
game?
online and put pressure on PSA to
Or-
pay him what they owed? But one of the most
Warhammer.
insane
Never heard of it.
controversies that gained traction online was when PSA admitted they damaged
PSA
someone's
destroyed my
extremely
lenticular-
rare card,
Oh, yeah, he
and
was
many
talking
saw
about this
this
earlier.
as the final nail in the coffin for their reputation. A man named Brian revealed that his PSA 10 Pokemon
Damn, I would
card
be
was
pissed,
severely
I ain't gonna lie.
damaged while getting it reholdered
50K
by
thrown
PSA,
out the window?
bumping it
Oh
all
my-
the way down
It's
to
like
a
a
grade
universe?
6. The card was
Oh,
a
okay.
sky-splitting Deoxys, an extremely
Hold on,
rare
hold on, hold on,
card
hold on, let's see,
released
let's
in
talk about-
limited
What is Warhammer, Jack? What is Warhammer, Jack? Let's see. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, it's cool. I'm trying to think of what I think it is. It's like close to. I have something in my head that I think like I used to play when I was a kid that is close to, but I can't think of it, bro. Holy shit. That's cool though. Warhammer, never heard of it.
quantities in
I just like the
2004
lore,
and never
but
printed
people
in
paint
English.
minifigures
There
and
were
they're
very
expensive
few
as hell.
and in his condition, making Brian's card almost impossible to replace. Now, Brian was getting his card reholdered. Basically, what this means is he already submitted it before
nice
and it got a
look.
10, but he was
That's a
paying
cool
them
package,
to
holy
crack open
shit.
the old plastic case and seal the exact same card into
Like
a
the
brand
new
new
case?
holder. Collectors do this all the
Oh,
time if the slab
that's
gets
why.
scratched, cracked, or it just looks old. A fresh holder can make an expensive card easier to sell because buyers know
And
the
then they
case
fucked
is
this shit
brand
up on
new and the
purpose. I
card
know-
had
they
recently
definitely do
been
that shit on purpose,
inspected.
bro.
The problem is that the moment PSA cracks the case open, they're handling one of the rarest cards in the world, and if anything goes
Yeah.
wrong, the damage is permanent. PSA acknowledged that they had damaged the
As
card.
as our policy, we offered $20,000. And they removed the fee. You're
and
crazy.
offered to reimburse
What?
Brian the full market value, which they determined to be $20,000.
Nah, that
He
shit's
wasn't
worth
happy with
50K,
this,
no?
considering that the same card had
Yeah,
sold
see,
for up to
45K.
$45,000 around
What?
the same time, with others saying it was worth even more. Multiple people have told me
PSA
that the
also
Deoxys
rates
is
cards
$60,000
based on the card's
plus,
value.
and
Yeah,
I
that's the
personally
thing.
have an offer over that.
If it's
PSA
over like
fixed this
20K,
issue.
I guess.
PSA
What I've been
got the
realizing
20
from this video, if it's over like 20K, they'll charge you like $1,000 extra when it's already graded, just so you can get your card back. Like
$1,000
what?
figure by
That
averaging
is
all of the
genuinely
recent
simple,
sales
like-
of that same card. And this just
It's
seems
just-
like
yeah,
a
it's a
slap in the
scam.
face
It
because
genuinely is a
at
scam.
best they're offering half and at worst a third of what it's actually worth. But the problem is they caused the loss of the card and then gave themselves the authority to decide how much that loss was worth.
Yeah,
And rather
they
than
was gonna
accepting
probably
their
buy it
deal,
back for that
Brian
price
took to
anyways
the
in the app,
internet.
so-
Once again, the community was furious.
The fuck,
And this
like-
specific situation ramped up to a whole new level once Moist Critical
Sub
made a
mashed
video
potatoes in
about
the
it.
shower.
This is
I
where
can't
it gets
see that
extremely
right now.
spicy. That card
It just says
sold
3 dots.
only a couple of weeks ago
I don't know
by
what that is.
PSA. And this is where it gets a little conspiratorial, but I think there's a lot of merit to it. There are people that are
I've been watching
speculating that
shots
they didn't
vids
actually
about
damage
card
his
ratings
card
and tasks
when
where something
reholdering
seems
it.
like
The
the
encapsulation
most legit.
process,
TAS?
it's a psyop. It's not
TAS.
real.
Never heard of it
What they're thinking might have happened
Maybe.
is PSA
What I've heard is,
when reholdering that
what's
PSA
that one?
10 Deoxys that was submitted.
It's like
They took it
It's a playlist
and then
of music?
sold it themselves and then
Oh,
instead gave him
I
a
can't
6
see,
saying
might
that
just be
it
a
was
link.
damaged and now it's it's down to a 6.
I guess PSA now stands for Pro
Pro
Scam,
Scam
Artists.
Artists.
Critical brought
No,
awareness to
deadass,
this
though.
dispute far outside the card collecting community, putting PSA under more pressure than ever before. Brian announced they had come to an agreement that he was satisfied with, indicating
provide
that
an
he was
updated,
compensated for the
PSA
proper
10,
market value of his
you know,
card.
same
By
week,
this
yeah.
point, the pattern becomes a bit too familiar. PSA rejected a complaint, the collector went public on the internet, and then the company changed their mind after the story went viral. There are dozens of
Damn.
other
So they didn't
examples
even wanna
of
do shit till
PSA
it went
destroying
viral?
their customers'
Wow.
cards, and you have to wonder if
Wow,
these
wow.
individuals were ever given proper compensation. Probably not, because a massive YouTuber didn't make a video about them. And now I'm just genuinely curious if anyone watching has ever had this happen to them. Like, you submitted a card to PSA and you know for a 100%
That's me,
fact
bro.
that they
Deadass
messed
was
up
supposed
your
to get a
card
fucking 10,
and then
bro.
sent it back.
I was
but
supposed to get a
hoped
10.
that you'd never notice. Comment below if that happened.
Oh, no, I never sent that
PSA's
shit back,
grade
though.
is supposed to be a symbol
Never
of
sent that shit back.
reliability and prestige, but these days their reputation
Tag.
isn't much
Oh,
better
okay.
than a sketchy
I was like, I
pawn
never heard of
shop.
Taz.
And yet,
I definitely
people
heard
are
of
still
Tag for
sending
sure.
in millions of cards to PSA every single year. But why?
10
Well, the thing
million
is,
cards?
most collectors don't continue to use
Whoa.
PSA because they trust them. They continue because they have no other realistic option. There
Yeah,
are other
that's the
companies
only,
that do
like,
gradings,
that's
but a
the
card with a
biggest
PSA
company.
label label can sell for far more than the same card graded by a competitor.
Yeah, that's
leaving
the thing,
PSA for another
say they got
authenticator
a
would
like you're saying, say they got a tag 10 or something. Maybe it might not sell as much.
significantly cut down the
a PSA
overall
10,
value
but
of someone's collection. And with
like,
the prices for some of these
PSA
cards,
is
we're talking
correct,
about
and they might not
millions
even
of
give you that
dollars
10.
in
So that's the
value right
bullshit.
down the
Like,
drain.
what are you
Boycotting
supposed
won't
to do?
work because all collectors would have to do it together. The market has decided that PSA is the gold standard, and it's almost
Very
impossible
curious,
to go
everyone's
against
opinion.
what the market wants.
Galactic.
As long as buyers seek out PSA graded cards, sellers will continue to sell them, which means that they will just have to deal with whatever nonsense comes with working with PSA. This is why monopolies are supposed to be illegal. But above all else, PSA is just another example of how any hobby or niche eventually gets hijacked and exploited by corporations. The same thing happened with sneakers. Any regular person who wants to occasionally, maybe once a year or every other year, buy a nice pair of sneakers has to deal with insane price gouging, unavailability of sizes because collectors or resellers pay thousands of dollars just to let a pair collect dust on a shelf. Shoes turned into a status symbol, and now it's trading cards. Actually playing with your Pokemon card could scratch the artwork, and wearing your sneakers could scuff them up, which will devalue them, which is ironic because most people buy nice things because they want to actually use nice things, but the only way to protect the value is to avoid enjoying it for what it is. And unfortunately,
it's like saying Michael
no hobby
Jackson
is safe from this.
dropping.
It's only going to get
wild.
worse. Once people begin to put a price on their favorite pastime, they make way for opportunists to take advantage of the hobby and get rich. PSA isn't just a tragic story of an innocent hobby being corrupted, it is a reminder that nothing you love is safe or sacred anymore. And PSA isn't the only business that's built an empire by telling people what their collectibles are worth. Pawn Stars made a fortune with these same questionable tactics.
I have a video
Check out this
for you to
video
react
hear
to
that
if you want
story.
to. It's an Among Us gaming video.